modern intellectual cocktail party is about things like politics. Is this good for the country or what? The economy. All too much. This is just all too much. A bunch of things that I think I know about, but I really don't know about.
What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, I think what we have in this country is we have corporatism. What we have is government, big government, helping big corporations. And so the regulations are such that it helps big governments grow bigger and bigger, which helps big government grow bigger and bigger. And it's just this like monstrosity that just like feeds off of each other, and it grows and grows and grows, which is why we have problems.
But do you know why we have that? What's going to add to that? The Supreme Court decision that allows corporations to go ahead and fund elections in place.
No, it's totally fucked up. I mean, you have to have, like, there's a few things we need in this country. We need term limits. Right. Because we have these career politicians who just sit there, get fat and happy. We got people like, Goldman Sachs paying the money. We wonder why Goldman Sachs has the treasury. I mean, like, everybody from Goldman Sachs comes in and runs.
But don't you think that, but here's the thing. In the bigger picture, though, in the terms of the interests of the people, the government, even though we all agree the government is bought off, in the real world it is, but the government is there to serve us. So if the people really took control of the government and got involved from top to bottom, the government would look out for our interests, and then we can have it as an instrument of the people and to regulate smart.
I actually agree with some of the statements that Matt was making, you know, because I think that the government regulations or government involvement has been so much in business, they're in bed with each other, and society isn't benefiting.
But that's because it grows the biggest.
But that's not an argument for no government or limited government. That's just a corrupt government that we need to say, stop, let's slow the fuck down and do what we need to do to make things right.
I agree. My problem with big government is that it just continues to grow. And I'm not saying this is an ideological statement. I'm saying factually, if you look at history, all governments, the more they grow, the faster they grow, and then they metastasize, and before you know it, you're in a dictatorship, and then there's...
It's a cycle. It's a slippery slope because look,
it is a slippery slope.
We're a really big society, and the bigger the societies get.
Exactly. We have 380 million people. You know, it's not the frontier anymore.
What does that mean, though?
Okay, because you need more government to regulate more technology, more people. You need bigger government.
But the world is a more complicated place than it was 100 years ago.
So what I'm saying, if you get down to it, you guys say that you need to forfeit some liberty, individual liberty.
Who said you have to forfeit any liberty?
Yes, you do. It's called the social contract.
He's talking about taxes.
You're fucking right, you do.
But why do you? If there's a constitution in this country,
you give up a good deal of liberties to participate in what we call everyday life here in the United States of America.
Even though
social contract.
You know what? They don't allow
you will not just have the right to go punch someone in the face
or I can't walk around
That's not liberty. That's not liberty.
That is what the social contract
fundamentally is. It says that when you wake up every single morning and you go out into the world and you do not have the liberty to just go live your life by any means that you so choose forth because you agree to a certain amount of societal norms.
But that's not what we're talking about. What I'm talking about is the right for me to do as I want as long as it does not.
That sounds exactly like what I just said.
What I'm saying to you is the more government you have, the more you forfeit your individual.
But if we have things like the internet, we have things like broadcasts. If we have different technologies,
I'm talking about you work from January to May to pay taxes.
But if we need more streets, if we need the fire department,
this is why.
you need the government.
Let me explain why we need taxes. We need taxes because we have a lot of people in this society, and a lot of them make a lot of money. The rest of them don't make so much money. And when you have a huge society, you're big consumers, and so the people that are not making as much money actually spend all their
they don't save.
And not only do they not save, they actually do what's called, this is an economic term called dis-save, which they actually get into debt. So that actually hurts our society.
To the rich people, by the way.
It does, but that goes back to the whole credit situation. Like the fact that you can spend money you don't even have.
But I'm talking about why government needs to be involved, because you cannot go into people's houses. It's costing people.
You can't trust corporations to do it by themselves.
This is that fundamental disagreement. I disagree. I think if you're poor, what you should do is
Are you a social Darwinist?
I guess to some degree I am.
You know what?
Let me say one thing. Okay, what I believe is that if you work hard to make a lot of money, eventually what ends up happening is you donate a lot of that money. If you look at Bill Gates, I know Bill Gates is an extreme example, but what's he doing right now? He's taking all the money that he earned.
Not all of it. He's still has $38 billion.
Listen to me. I make good money and I give a lot of it to charity. Right?
So
hold on.
But most people,
a lot of people do that. We had a society.
Why? I wonder, do they give money away? Maybe because there's a tax break for it.
Exactly.
But if you didn't have to incentivize
Bill Gates can feed the world.
Bill Gates is a terrible example. He's trying to get rid of fucking malaria. Pick a better example.
No, he's good. Hey, hold on. Let me get someone else to chime in here.
Malaria.
What do you think? He brought up a good point about giving away money when you're working hard of taxes. She brought up the point why we need taxes and why rich people need to pay more, and I completely agree with you. I think that anything...
It's unconstitutional.
When they see things like flat tax as if 20%
why are you laughing about
person,
that? If it's unconstitutional, our country was founded on a document.
When it comes to taxes, I don't have a problem with paying taxes, just the fact that the money should get spent properly. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. When I was in school, I had a girl who was going to graduate schools in one of my classes, and she had worked as an aide for some senator or congressman in Florida. Dude, she was staying at where Nixon got
a luxury hotel
at Watergate. She was staying at Watergate at some $1,000 a night room. Why would we spend?
That's like Nancy Pelosi's monthly rental.
Like Nancy Pelosi flying her plane across the country, her private jet. Bro, why?
I think we can all agree on that.
Okay, see,
but you also have a problem.
I think we can also all agree that also represents 1% of the budget, and it's a minimal financial expense. And if you really wanted to get into cut anything, you talk about defense spending. It's an important issue, but let's be realistic.
I think that's
talking about 1% of the budget. Let's be clear as well.
As a conservative,
let's be clear though. You're talking about something that represents less, like 1% to less than.
But
the
it shows you how ridiculous.
But it also shows you that if you cut that
I'm
completely, you wouldn't make a goddamn dent in the debt that you want to talk about as the greatest.
I'm using it as a
talk about something that would actually make a difference.
I'm using it as a simple example, just to the fact that the government wastes a lot of money. So now talking
about...
No,
they do.
Now talking about defense.
I understand.
Okay, there's this plane, I forgot what it was, but I read about it. Even Dick Cheney said this is a fucking waste of money and we shouldn't be spending money on it, and we're spending something like $40, $50 million.
Exactly.
Well, now hold on a second, because I know exactly what you're talking about. The F-35. Let's break this down, because it's not as cut and dry as you want to make it out to be. You've got the Obama administration and Robert Gates, the defense secretary, who are trying to cut it. They're from the current budget.
Don't touch your boobs.
I'm not touching her boobs. I'm talking to space here. I would love if her space was closer to my space. That's not the point. They're trying to cut it from the budget. They're threatening a veto, okay? But the reason that it has been put back in by the House and the Senate is because they get a shitload of money from the companies, the defense contractors that are based there in their home districts.
Yeah.
So you are talking about one government entity trying to cut it versus another government entity. So when your whole argument is too much big government, blah, 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 what do you do when the government is trying to cut something but the government is standing in the way? You realize that you presented an entirely false dichotomy, and that the argument that you're peddling is pure propaganda bullshit.
Because the corporations run the fucking government. The lobbyists run the government.
No, you are not making it out to be more nuanced, because you are believing in corporations to be benevolent entities. The reason that government exists as a thing in the first place is because there has been no other entity in human civilization that has stepped up and has been able to provide the amount of benefits to the amount of people that government has.
Right, but at some point it goes the opposite
direction. That is not the point. The point is that no corporation can ever seek to match that level. That is why government exists. So the argument that too much government versus no government regulation is a bit of a false argument, because as human beings, we have reached a point in civilization where we want a government regulation, but there's a large group of people who continue to articulate no government regulation whatsoever.
And those people usually get the bailouts. And those people usually get the bailouts.
Exactly. Let me ask you. That's my point. It's very much so tied in corporate.
Let me ask you something though. Do you think? Because I mean, I think one of the problems that we have is that we have lawyers that make everything so complicated. Yeah. I mean, every single document that's like the healthcare bill, 1,200 pages. Yeah. Mostly it's because of lawyers putting in all this ridiculous.
Well, I just resorted to reading Yahoo's page.
Right, exactly.
I need like a 3-paragraph explanation of what this means.
Well, let's not even look at the healthcare bill. Let's just look at derivatives with Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan Chase. They don't even know the things that are contained within them. You don't even need to look at something like the healthcare bill. You just need to look at the entire financial industry. It's built on making things so complicated that no one can know.
You can't fight it.
Forget about government. Focus on the corporations, because that's where it starts.